Hi, everybody. Good evening, members, friends, and guests. Welcome to the Battle of Homestead Foundation's 2025 annual meeting. Tonight, we'll look back on a topsy-turvy year and highlight our hopes and challenges to help make a better world. And tonight, we're honored to hear from two compelling speakers. The subject is very timely and much debated: government employees. We've put our featured speakers first on the agenda, followed by a brief Q&A. All audience questions must be in writing and submitted on the chat. After Q&A, we'll highlight our organization's 2024 accomplishments and we'll share our plans for 2025. Let me introduce now our speakers. Michael Lewis is an investigative journalist and best-selling author whose 18 books include The Big Short, The Blind Side, Moneyball, Boomerang, Liar's Poker, and Flash Boys. His books have won 2 Los Angeles Times Books prizes, and several have reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. His 2018 book, The Fifth Risk, and a recent Washington Post feature article examined contributions that federal employees make in helping government operate and provide vital services across the country every day. Actually, it would be difficult to identify any major economic or social issue that Michael Lewis has not written about cogently, with clarity and good humor. Joining Michael Lewis tonight is longtime Battle of Homestead Foundation member Christopher Mark. Chris has worked for the federal government for nearly 40 years, and he has had a distinguished career in the field of mining safety. In fact, you can read all about Chris's career in the recent Washington Post article written by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis wrote about Christopher Mark. Christopher Mark, we are very proud of you and your life and work. I hand over the mic now to you to switch roles and interview your new friend and biographer, Michael Lewis. And folks, I guarantee you this, it won't be boring. Take it away, Chris.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Well, it certainly is true that federal employees have been in the news quite a bit for the over the last week. And even before, and so I was just wondered, Michael, if you might want to start and talk a little bit about how we met, how you found me in the bowels of the federal government and started our relationship.
So can I take about 5 or 10 minutes just to set this all up? Because
absolutely,
the backstory is important, I think.
Yes.
It's really important that I don't present myself as like a champion of government workers and union labor from way back when. That wasn't the motive. Was my motives were a little bit perverse, and it went back to right after the first Trump election, the first time he won the presidency. I was really interested. I got interested in the government workforce after they fired the transition team. And there was this, and I learned at that point, I just caught, there was an article in the newspaper that caught my eye that there were meant to be hundreds and hundreds of people from the new administration rolling in to get briefings from the Obama administration as to how this enterprise worked. And the fact that Trump had fired everybody and then also had told Chris Christie, I soon learned that they didn't need to learn anything about it because it'd take them an hour or two just to figure it all out. It wasn't that big a deal. What I thought in the very beginning was literary opportunity. It was like, oh, the Obama administration has prepared essentially a graduate level course on the government, on how the government works, and no one's taking the course. I can roll in and take the course. So I wrote, that's the fifth risk. It was a series of articles, and the challenge I set myself there was to sort of pick what seemed to me the most boring and obscure departments in the federal government and see what was going on. And it was you could, it was so not state or treasury. I picked agriculture, energy, and commerce. And mainly because I live in Berkeley. I have all these neighbors who are politically energized, but when I would ask them, what does the energy department do? They'd have no idea. And I thought, like, people should know. So I roll in and I do this piece, and it's the series of pieces. It's really about the functions of government. It's not about so much about the people. And it was done initially as a series for Vanity Fair magazine, which is not an obvious place to write about the agriculture department. It's an obvious place to write about Princess Diana. And the first one of these things that drops is on the energy department. And it's the most read thing on the Vanity Fair website that they've had since a profile of Princess Diana. It just went boom. And that told me that, wow, I'm right. People want to know about this. And I wanted to know about it. And it was actually quite riveting what was going on in these departments that no one knew anything about. So I'm getting to you, but there's one more stop. The hardback comes out. It's a stapled together series of magazine pieces, and it sells 500,000 copies, which is crazy. So further proving that, like, there's an appetite for this. A year later, I need to bring out the paperback. And I think maybe I have to write something at the back of the paperback. And I thought maybe I'll just focus on an employee, one civil servant for the back of this thing. And so there was a moment where the government was shut down and there were all these people who were furloughed. So I picked a furloughed civil servant, and we can circle back and I'll tell his story at some point, but it was so good. He was a lifelong oceanographer in the Coast Guard Search and Rescue Division. And I do want to tell a story, but I don't want to get stuck here for too long. But that story was so good that I thought, my God, is it true that if you just go trawling through the federal government and kind of randomly pick federal employees, you get stories? Like, I did not expect that. So I have a friend who runs half the Washington Post. He runs the opinion and feature side of the Washington Post. And I was talking to him about this on a hiking trail one day a couple of years ago. And he said, we should do a series. We should do a series where you gather the bunch of writers you really like, and we'll just parachute them into the federal government and say, find a story. And this could have gone sideways fast. It could have been like, we hire these people and they go in and there's nothing to write about. And instead, we parachuted my 6 other colleagues, and you'll know some of the names: Dave Eggers and Geraldine Brooks, Kamau Bell, Sarah Vowell, John Lanchester, and Casey Sepp. Well-known writers, all of whom the requirement was none of it ever bored me. They were all really good at just walking into situations and making them interesting. They all took about a nanosecond to find a story that was fantastic. And almost all of them were focused on a single person. So, and I had curated this thing. I was in the position of, oh no, I've got to write a story. What on earth am I going to write about? I'd forgotten about me. And so I called up an organization called the Partnership for Public Service, which is maybe the world's institutional authority on the federal bureaucracy. It's got its own interesting backstory. People who run it are friends of mine, and they give away these awards every year to people who've done outstanding things in the civil service. And Chris got one this year, called the Sammy Awards. And I know that they gather up lots of nominations. And I asked them, could you just give me a list of the people who are nominated for this year? And it's a list of, 500 or 600 people. And I thought I'll just pick someone off of this kind of randomly. So I got the list, and it was all, they don't do a very good job of selling the Sammy Awards or of humanizing the people. The list is it's all people, Joe Smith works at the Internal Revenue Service, found $1 billion in fraudulent transactions and prosecuted the people responsible, but nothing about Joe Smith. I'm reading this and there's nothing about any of the people. And then I get to Christopher Mark, and it says Christopher Mark worked in the Department of Labor or the Bureau of Mines or whatever, and has devoted his career to preventing roof falls in coal mines, which has saved the lives of countless coal miners. And then it said a former coal miner. And I thought, there's a story here, man. That I'm gonna go in. I don't know who he is. My mind was like, he must be like born in West Virginia. He was a former coal miner. How does he get out of the coal mines to figure out that technical problem? Must have had like family tragedy, just motivated. I had a Hollywood movie in my mind. So I just Google Chris and I get an email or a phone number. I think probably started with an email. And I call him up. And I think Chris will agree. He was a little bewildered by like, I'm calling him out of the blue. I think you knew a book or two of mine. I think maybe you knew Moneyball, or there was I wasn't a total alien to you, but still it was weird.
I'd seen The Big Short. That's
seen the movies. That's right. Never read the book. Seen the movies. Seen the movies. That happens a lot. But this is true of every civil servant I've ever called up. It's like, what are you calling me? Like, why? But it took about 5 minutes for me to figure out, one, you were an incredibly interesting person. Two, the story was so much more interesting than I thought. So just forget whatever I thought. Three, just go with you and see what this is. And now this takes me into, the history of labor, because your original motives are like you're concerned with labor. And so therefore I become concerned with labor and I become interested in coal mines. But I couldn't have told you the difference between a longwall mine and a room and pillar mine when I met you. I wouldn't even known there were two different kinds of coal mining. So I didn't know anything. So I wasn't going in looking for the reason for this organization. I was going in just looking for a character and a story. And I got to tell you, so this series has been a huge hit. It's coming out as a book called Who is Government in March. This piece, the piece about you, 13,000 words about a career civil servant in the Washington Post, was one of the most read things they've ever published. And I think it's trying to tell us something, that there's a disconnect between the public conversation about government, bureaucracy, deep state, whatever, the political conversation, what goes in the noise every day that we hear on cable news, and what people are actually doing. And when you pull back the curtain just a bit and you introduce an audience in a non-political way, really, I mean, to the extent anybody can do that, but just here's the story of this person who's trying to do something for his country. And this is what he's trying to do. And this is what happened. People just want to know. It sort of just takes them in a different place in their minds. And I had this with the fifth risk in the afterwards, but I've had it with this piece too. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, you kind of changed my mind about government. You stopped me from defaulting to this stereotype that I have in my head, which is to be dismissive of it, to just like, oh, waste, fraud, abuse, whatever, deep state, whatever. No, these are people who are they're performing a function. There's usually a very good reason why they are doing it. Mainly the reason is the society wants it done and the market won't do it. And the people involved are often people who could have made a lot more money doing something else and found a lot less purpose in their lives. They are mission driven people. They're kind of wired that way. That they, not all of them, but the ones I've been writing about are, though. But people who have identified a problem and want to fix something. And it's amazing. It's such a simple story. It's a kind of story that the story of Chris Mark, probably written 40 years ago, no one would have paid attention. It would have been, oh, of course, that's how it is, kind of thing. Now it seems like a memo from Mars. People are just entranced. And I think of this as almost journalistic arbitrage or journalistic like investing. It's shocking what an audience you get with this material, which should be encouraging to your organization. It's shocking how many people want to read about it. And I'll just finish with this. So as I said, the book comes out in March. It's just a collection of newspaper pieces, magazine pieces, basically. Plus, I wrote another one about someone else that hasn't appeared elsewhere that's going to be at the end of the book. This should be, the publisher should have modest ambition for this. The publisher has just called me Friday I told them I'd give them 2 days on television in New York to talk about it. And they said, we're going to need you back for a week more because Colbert wants to do it. And all of CNN wants to do it. And Morning Joe wants to do it. And it's like, everybody wants to talk about this. This is interesting. I mean, it's interesting. This opportunity for a writer shouldn't be available. It's too obvious. That I shouldn't have had to find you kind of randomly with a phone call and write about it and get everybody interested. So it's an interesting moment. It will pass, but it's an interesting moment.
Mm-hmm. You've said before that as you see it, one of the reasons why the federal government, federal employees are in the situation that we're in is because the federal government really doesn't do a good job of advertising itself, that it doesn't really know how to tell its story. And, so that's the opportunity that you saw. And I'm wondering, are there other ways? It's great to have Michael Lewis holding the banner for us, but it may take a little more than that. And so I'm wondering if you have any other, or if you had any other thoughts of ways to get this story out.
Well, so you saw the expression of one of my thoughts was I did the fifth risk. I sold a bazillion copies. I thought I drew attention to the subject and I assumed journalists would be all over it, and they weren't. So I brought in 6 friends to do it too. And so that was one. So they're all energized and looking for stories in the federal government. So that was one response to that. What you said before is absolutely right. It is amazing. I mean, there are reasons why the federal government's bad at telling its story, but the big one is no matter what party's in power, the political people sort of suppress the story. They make it very hard to get to the story. Like you will admit that, that you slightly violated protocol being so open with me. Like a more ordinary civil servant would have been worried about losing his job, would have been consulting the politicals, the communication team. And you basically they gave you permission, but you basically said, get in the car and let's go look at some coal mines. And you need to be able to do that. And that's, most people won't. Most people are scared. And so the stories don't get out. So so I'll give you an example of something I tried to do, came that close to happening. The answer is media, versions of various forms of media. As we all know, for every person who reads an article, 110 people watch a TV show and 100 people watch a TikTok video. So you want to get out in a different sort of way. I came that close to, I think, actually doing it with the fifth risk. I sold the book for film to Obama's production company. Obama himself took an interest in the subject, which is kind of funny because I'm not sure how much of an interest in the subject he took when he was president. But anyway,
he had a lot of other things to think about.
He had other things to think about, but I thought it was kind of funny. He's probably going to pay more attention to the civil service as the producer of my book than he did when he was president, but whatever. So he and I sat down and kind of noodled over what this might look like. And I can't remember whether it was his idea or mine, so it was probably his. He said, you know what we could do? I'll get George Bush, so it's not Republican, Democrat. We'll sit at the end of a table. We'll get however many departments there are, I should know. Say they're 19, 17, whatever it is. We'll get a famous comedian for every department. So we can have anybody. We can have Chris Rock. We can have Will Ferrell. So everybody would do this. We'll sit them all at a long table, and Bush and I will interview them and assign them each a department. So that Will Ferrell will be Secretary of Agriculture, and he'll go. Each one will have to go off and make a 1-hour video that's partly a job application, but partly an explanation about what this thing is and how I'm going to run it. And of course, it would be comic, but it would also be educate. It would be like a civics lesson that you'd want to hear. And for whatever reason, the higher ground, the Obama production people thought, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do it a different way. and they did it in a way no one wanted to pay attention to. But that's the kind of thing. They just need more of it. It's just like, I think the whole country, I don't know why, and I don't know why this is, except maybe when I was growing up, I got a civics lesson because we were still afraid of, we still had a sense of urgency about the country's existence and threats from outside, and where we hadn't gone through a long period of peace and prosperity. But there's a feeling like the country has not been delivered decent civics lessons about just how things work. Like, so that when a president says something outrageous, they know it's outrageous. Or when people say things about the Department of Labor, they know, oh, actually know some things that go on in there, and that's not quite right. But I think, I mean, look, short of me running for office, I mean, the politicians could do something about it. And I'm kind of surprised the Democrats have been as muted as they are on the subject. Everybody's sort of scared of their own shadow on the subject of the government. No one really wants to offer a full-throated defense. And what these stories are, they aren't set out. They didn't set out to be full-throated defenses. They just naturally are, because if I write a profile of you that's an honest profile, everybody says, God, we want more of that. Give me more of that, not less of that. So I don't know why neither party has found that voice, but there's no reason storytellers can't. And the trick is now to make the jump from print. I mean, it's crude, but print to video to film, and film to fragments of film. And I didn't tell you this. You'll be happy to know that I got a call a couple of weeks ago from my movie agent saying there are people who want to make your story into a movie.
Yeah.
And now God knows how they're going to do it. Or they say that people don't laugh.
I believe anything, Michael.
The love interest is going to be fantastic. It's going to be the coal mine roof repairman who is just so hot that the ladies can't keep their hands off him. But that is important. You want to encourage it because you need to get the stories out. I think that's just it. Anyway, I want to ask you one thing, because it's got to be weird having someone stranger call you up, say, hey, I want to write an article about you or whatever I said, and you kind of know who I am. Did you think, God help him, there's nothing to do here? Or did you think, God, there is a story, it's going to be fun to tell it?
Well, I've always thought it was a great story. I just thought it had a very limited audience. That's all.
Why did you think it's life and death, man? Why did you think?
Well, I guess, I mean, I tend to look at it more from the technical side, I guess. And I'll just tell a little story just to give you an example. The week or so after the article came out, I was way up in northern Ontario, and I was getting ready to go off on a week-long kayaking trip out into the islands. I wasn't going to see anybody. So we're at the Outfitters in the evening. There's this other party there that are also getting ready to set out. And so we got to talking, and, as it often happens, somebody asked me what I do for a living. And I said, well, I'm a specialist in mine safety. And usually I get kind of a blank look from people, moves on. All right. Well, this time the guy says, oh, thank you so much for what you do. He says, just the other day I read an article in the Washington Post about a guy that has a job just like yours. So it's, somehow it's, you managed to really pull the human side of it out. And I would venture that, most of us civil servants do kind of lose sight of that a little bit, that you get lost in the day-to-day details and the technical side of things, and you're aware. I mean, that's why you're doing it in the first place. But nonetheless, it's and of course we're not used to explaining things to the general public anyway, so
this is when I realized just the nature of the nut I was trying to crack when I started writing about the people rather than just the institution. it was that piece where the furloughed employee, Art Allen was his name. And I called him up out of the blue. He had been nominated for a Sammy Award. He didn't win, but I called him up out of the blue, and he had he'd spent his lifetime figuring out how objects drift at sea, and the drift of lots of different objects. And you need to know that to predict where an object that was lost at point X is at time X, is at time Y. And it saved all kinds of lives because it helps the Coast Guard predict where people who are lost at sea might be. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I called him out of the blue, and he had a wonderful story. I said, I'm in California, I'll fly across country, and I want to spend a little time talking to you about what you do. And I know I told him I'm like going to write something about it. I don't know whatever I told him. I told him whatever I told you. And I went and spent 3 days with him and wandered around his life, went and saw where he did his work, interviewed his wife and kids, just kind of really got to know him. And on the way back to the airport, when I was leaving, coming home, he calls me and he says, "Hey, you're a writer." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a writer." He says, "My son says you're like big time, like their movies have made of your books and things." And I said, "Well, yeah, some movies have been made of my books." He goes, "Man, you're going to write about this?" And I said, "Yeah, Art, why'd you think I was there?" And he said, "I just thought you were really interested in how objects drift." And but this is the story, right? It's sort of like an expert. You get to the level of expertise that you have achieved. Your whole day is you're dealing with the minutia of your expertise. You think that's why people are interested. You can't imagine people being interested for some other reason. And that it isn't just the expertise.
Right.
And I don't know what he thought I was going to do. Come back home and save people in the San Francisco Bay. I don't know what he thought I was after.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but it just like that, I think it's pretty extreme, but I think you're describing that there is like, in order for people to tell their stories, they have to be aware that it is a story. So there's partly it's that. And I got to say, from my point of view, it's delightful and refreshing and encouraging to find characters who have great stories who don't know it. I mean, there is the opposite, which is I got famous on YouTube. You got to write a book about me. And it's like people who think of themselves as great characters are usually not. And they sort of lose altitude on the page when they're very self-consciously characters. And what's beautiful about the expertise in the civil service is you don't get to be an expert in something like you're expert in without having a lot of things interesting about you. There's a reason you stuck with it for 40 years. And, but a lot of people who are doing it, they're so sort of captured by the problem they're dealing with that they don't step back and think of what their story is. They don't think of it as a story. So it's not. I don't find when I've walked in, and I've now done it half a dozen times. I've walked in one of these big departments and said, "I want to talk to him or her," or "Is there anybody here with a great story?" or however it is. It's the political people, the communications people are all, "Give me the list of questions. You can have 20 minutes with the person," kind of thing. But I don't sense below that there is a mob of civil servants dying to tell their story. That it's not like, often it's like, "Oh, why are you? I'm surprised you're interested. I don't mind you're interested, but sure, I'll come tell you about what I do. But I'm surprised this is interesting to you." And that's what was just disproven by this Washington Post series. Every one of the pieces got a huge kind of like popped. They were all interesting, and they were all about people who didn't know it was how interesting it was. The experience you had, everybody had, which is, and that is interesting.
Yeah, there certainly were some very interesting characters. It comes to mind that the guy that worked for the IRS, and I mean, the hobbies alone would have been
but so that's kind of decorative. But what about Ron Walters? Ron Walters, who is handed at the Veterans Administration the problem of dealing with the national cemeteries where we bury our war dead. It is a sacred obligation of the country, and the customer service, it's crudely put, but it is put that way. The customer satisfaction of that department was quite low along 15, 20 years ago when he moved into the job. And he does such a good job of tending the cemeteries that the customer satisfaction today is the highest customer satisfaction of any organization in America, including all of private enterprise, as measured by this group at University of Michigan that measures such things. Now that it's a sacred obligation of the country, the way we treat our military, our war dead. It had been kind of neglected for whatever reason, or just shabby. This guy comes in and transforms it. You have, millions of grateful Americans as a result, and no one notices. I mean, you would have thought at the very least, like corporate America would have been asking, like, how do you do it? Like, we would love to have those numbers, and he has an answer. There are things he did. There's a how-to story there. But that's our government, and the idea that you've got to come in and trash people like that, it's offensive. It's just offensive. And what I can't figure out, if I were the Democratic senator or the Republican senator from California right now, just me as I am now, I'd be getting up on the floor as often as I could and saying, how dare you talk about these people this way? How dare you get up and talk about deep state fraud, abuse, waste? Talk about these people who have devoted their lives to making this country better, the givers rather than the takers. And I just don't understand. I mean, I don't understand why that's such an unpopular message. I assume our political marketplace is more or less efficient, and if it really worked, that message, people would be delivering it. But for whatever reason, it's not being delivered. So it gets delivered this way. It gets delivered in stories by me as a journalist, and it sells a gazillion copies. I do feel like we're in some sort of unstable situation where we're going to come out. This is not going to be. It's not normal. It's not. It's just not. It's not. There's an untruth to the way the civil service is perceived right now.
Well, I'm always taken aback by this term, the deep state. I mean, I always understood the deep state, as a place like Egypt or Pakistan where there's a government, but the army behind the scenes has all the power, and they really determine what happens. And that when they talk about the deep state and Schedule F that they're going to do to civil servants, they're talking about mid-level career people in the U.S. government. I mean, there's no real power there.
No, I know it's a bizarre construct, and I don't. Well, I mean, it only is allowed that you're only allowed to say that kind of stuff if the population doesn't really understand how the government works. So, and that's the best I can do is help to correct that a little bit. So it warms my heart that you're up on your trip and someone says, "Oh, that's a cool thing to do."
Right.
That's the
right.
point.
Well, that's exactly.
It's a mind at a time, right? That's all you can do.
Right. Right. Well, we certainly greatly appreciate it, Michael.
Totally fun.
And the Battle of Homestead appreciates you coming here today and talking to us about this effort. Let's see. Do we have any questions, or do we have a couple more minutes? Questions? I see there's one question from Rosemary here.
Yes. We have a question from Rosemary, who asks if you would be interested in commenting on the Department of Government Efficiency.
It would be a great mistake on their part, but if they would let me in bed and write about them, I would do it in an instant. It would be fun to watch. And some of the best stuff is probably already passed, because this business of cutting, they've already backed. So they start by saying they're going to cut $2 trillion out of the government. Then they back off and they say it's at $1 trillion. And now they're not even talking about cutting. They're talking about improving the computer systems. It was really clear right from the beginning that the people who were talking about this and getting applause for talking about this didn't know anything about the government. And it gets even more interesting when you kind of look at their careers. Tesla doesn't exist without a guarantee from the Department of Energy on its loan way back when. Elon Musk doesn't like to talk about this, but it's like the government is involved every which way in his businesses.
Which government? Or is it the Chinese, Michael?
No. Well, now it's but in the beginning of his journey, he needed the United States government. I would have thought he would be grateful, but apparently not. So it's people who the Department of Government Efficiency is not it's not a new idea, right? This thing has existed forever. This fantasy that businessmen who really know how to run organizations are going to come in and kick this thing into shape and get rid of all the lazy people and all that. The Grace Commission was what it was called during the Reagan years, I think. I'm remembering it back. Al Gore had a version of this. And I guess what I'd say is, first, when your model in your mind is private sector and you're going to use what you know in the private sector to fix the government, you got to come in with some humility about how much that applies to government. Government's really not supposed to be exactly efficient. It's supposed to be effective. And there is going to be it's always going to be a little different from a private business. It's not going to be disciplined. The incentive system is never going to be quite like a private sector business. So you're not going to be able to manage people that way. It's going to be different. The fact that they don't acknowledge that coming in feels like a bad sign. However, I would say, and this is all me just talking off the top of my head because I have not looked into it much. I did ask someone who's friends with Elon Musk, would he let me in to watch? And nobody's called me back. But I did think that anything that actually throws a spotlight on it and we're asking, what should we do here, might lead to some place. At least we're talking about it. It's not like the government's perfect. It's not like it's all great the way it's structured. It has been neglected. I mean, I'm going to get this stat wrong, but roughly there is a stat that this is close to true. That something like 60% of the federal employees who are in information technology across the government are 60 years old or over. It's that's bad. All the people who don't know how to use their own phones are in charge of figuring out how to be. So we've failed in
some of us resent that a little bit.
Well, look,
you stay on top of our field.
Okay, all right, but it's more that we failed in attracting young talent to government. That anything you could do to make these jobs interesting to smart, young, energetic, ambitious, mission-driven people would be good. And there are things to do there. It's not like there's nothing to do. It's just like they didn't know how to do it. And they come in with such a poisonous spirit and start by insulting all the people who are there. It doesn't seem like the way you would do it, even in the private sector. Although he has done it at Twitter. He's sort of approaching the government the way he approached Twitter. And I'm not sure how well that's worked. It's not like that's a flourishing enterprise. So that's what I have to say about it. I would relish. I mean, if I could have been a fly on the wall, it'd be fabulous because it really is this fantasy in the minds of people who make a lot of money in the private sector that, they could just do anything. Government would be easy to just fix. And then when they're brought in, they actually have to do something. They find that this is much trickier than they thought. And everybody gets humble all of a sudden. So I suspect Elon Musk probably not capable of getting to that. He'll just quit and go back to his companies. But if he was forced to live with the results of his work, he'd be humbled, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly is a lot easier on one level in the private sector when there's a simple measure of success or not. Either you're making money or your stock price has gone up or they're not, but with the government, it's pretty hard to measure how many lives you saved, how many disasters you've averted,
Yeah.
And to get credit for those things.
You just put your finger on it. So much of government is prevention. It's so much of government is what didn't happen.
Right.
And so it's just but the consequences of what doesn't happen. Let's just say we don't have another pandemic thanks to this bird flu that's circulating. and that it's because of something, I don't know, the CDC does. No one will ever say, oh God, they just saved us trillions. No, they won't. They'll just assume, no, that was just the way it was. Conversely, interesting to kind of wonder how COVID would have played out with a better government response. I mean, would there be hundreds of thousands of people alive today who weren't? So yes, it's like when you're in the prevention business, you don't get a lot of credit.
Do we have time for a couple more questions? Do we have a couple more questions?
John says 2 more. Oh, maybe 2 more or 2 minutes. I'm going to take it as ask a question. So, in case this is our last one, I'll ask about what you think that the Battle of Homestead Foundation, given its focus on labor history and advocacy, could do to increase the understanding about industries like mining and steel that are still important in our economy.
All right, I'm gonna answer that. I would try to answer that, but first I want to ask what Chris's answer is to that. Really?
Well, I think I was recently at an event with the other historical organization that I work with, the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum. And so we were talking about specifically about West Virginia history. And there's a long history of the underclass, the downtrodden, the coal miners, and so on, standing up for themselves in West Virginia. That really doesn't seem to be reflected in what people learn in schools, and and so on. And so they put it well that what our goal is to try to present a different narrative, to change the narrative. And I guess what occurred to me was, in today's world, with the omnipresence of media in all its forms, and you've talked about that, that's really not a very simple thing. I mean, back when I was growing up, it seems like it would have been possible to read a book, say, and have that really change your view on the world. But it seems less likely that would happen nowadays. So I think actually, I may be coming up with the same answer that you said earlier. That there's the book, but then there's the show, and then there's the clip. And each time you're going up by an order of magnitude of audience, and it's somehow dealing with that reality.
Yeah. So my answer to the question is tell the story. It's kind of like tell the story to young people. I mean, you got to find ways to interact with young people. Find ways to get into classrooms. That would be my answer. It's sort of like the story of labor in the country just never gets told very well. But young people are receptive, and I mean, I know what's on my mind is when I was working on the story about you, Chris. So my son's not that young; he's 17, but he's 16 when I started working on it, and he's surrounded by rich Silicon Valley kind of type people, and he was riveted. He was riveted by the whole thing. It's like, oh wait, what did coal miners do? Oh my God, the roofs fall on their heads. Oh, people died. And that was just normal. And he just did. It was just that story never got to him. And the story of labor is the story of most people. And it's sort of like kids get that. Like it's so that's what I would do. I'd find ways to I don't know. To figure out your story and get it into classrooms or interact with as young people in any way you can. They're receptive. Old people don't change their minds.
That's very good.
Thanks for having me.
Mara, let's take one more. And
Okay.
this is so good. I really hate to stop it, but let's take one more
Why are
anyway.
you going to stop it?
Sure. So I'll try to combine Perry's last three around the corporatization of government, government's purpose, whether or not that's making money, and how things like media play into that, including campaigning and personality and comparing that to policy, the boring stuff that you're mentioning.
I need a question. What's the question?
The question is, could you speak about the corporatization of government?
I'm not sure
I've got one there for you, Michael. Let me make that a little more specific. Now, I have to admit, I still have not read the book, The Big Short, but but I did see the movie, and I know you told me that you were not involved in the movie, so you're not responsible for this. But the only federal employees that are in the movie work for the SEC, and they are not portrayed in a very positive light, shall we say?
Yeah, they didn't do their job really, but yes.
Right. So I think that's probably an example of what Barry's
so that's example of
about.
That's a regulatory capture, which seems to happen whenever the industry makes a lot more money than the regulators. And that process at the SEC has been going on since the SEC was created, but particularly since the early 80s in extraordinary ways. I mean, I remember it seems charming now. I used to write articles right after I left Wall Street, how shocking it was that the head of enforcement at the SEC had taken a job at JP Morgan for $1 million a year. Like, how can that be? Like, how can you maintain the integrity of this institution if everybody knows there's this revolving door into industry? And so that's one side of the problem. It's capture by the regulators by the industry. And it was a problem that existed. You described it to me with the Bureau of Mines way back when, in the coal mining industry. But there's another kind of when I think of that word and our government, I think of this. It's like it's a misunderstanding of the purpose of the instrument, and the corporatization meaning we're going to come in. It's like government needs to be profitable in some way, or just a handmaiden to industry, or don't get in the way of people making money. And the truth is that the government has this whole other purpose. It's to keep us safe. And that's a large part of what the government does. And there's no money in that. That's not a profit making thing, but it's really good for us if it keeps us safe from lots of different risks. And so when I think the whole metaphor of we're gonna come at this and corporatize this in the way that like Doge is sort of suggesting is missing the whole point of government. And I have one thing. I see on the horizon a horribly frustrating moment for me and for anybody who basically likes government, thinks we need some government. And it's that the corporatizing impulses lead to mismanagement of the instrument in ways that not just make us less safe, but actually kill a lot of people. And the narrative will not be we misused the government or we misunderstood the government. The narrative will be, oh, government sucks. It didn't do its job. And when it wasn't really allowed to do its job. So that's what scares me about this moment. It's sort of like the people who are pretending to come in and fix the government actually don't really want it to work. Because if it works, then it's defensible. If it doesn't work, then you get to just attack it more. So when I think of the corporate impulse in government, I think of that. I think it's sort of beside the point of government or undermining government for the sake of the corporate interests. Chris has got me sounding like an old lefty. It's like all I need 2 days driving around West Virginia coal fields, and you've pulled me from like the center of the American politics way to the left. It's all you.
Well, I had some good effect.
All right, this has been fun.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. We really,
Sure.
really do appreciate it.
I'm gonna go hide and I'm gonna watch the rest of the meeting.
Okay, all right, great.
Great.
Thanks so much. And before I pass it back, I just wanted to just say how much being a member of the Battle of Homestead Foundation has meant to me. And I think Michael really hit on it, that our goal is to try to get the story of labor out, and it's an exciting one. It's a human story. It's a battle that's been going on from the beginning of history, and this is a really critical piece of it. And that work is changing all around us, but this battle for dignity of working people at the workplace is going to continue. And the Battle of Homestead Foundation has a very important role to play in that. So it certainly has been important to me to support the foundation in any way I can, and I certainly encourage all of everybody listening here to do the same.
Hey, Chris, we are so proud of you, and we thank you very much. I learned from reading Michael's article about you that you have saved thousands of lives, and it's incredible, and it's wonderful, and we're very proud of you. So, thank you, and thank Michael, and let's hope that these stories can be told in a broader fashion and to as many constituencies as will hear. And let's hope that we can continue to play a role in that. And we're all aware that Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, has sort of been in the center of turmoil and political change and challenge this past year. We've all been a part of it. And I think what's great about this discussion is we're starting to narrow down on what we can do and what we should do in terms of helping people understand the heritage we have of respect workers and workers' organizations and government as well. And to those people that are public employees and federal employees or county employees, thank goodness you have opportunities for unions, and that the old situation where you had to do what your department head said come election day, and not only that, but maybe you had to go out and hand out things and if you didn't, you wouldn't have a job. Now, at least you have due process rights at work, and you have the right to be, if you're going to be discharged, there has to be just cause for it through the unions. And the unions have helped, I think, government be more professional and public employees to feel that at least their jobs are meaningful. So I appreciate that too. So we have to move on, Chris, again, and Michael, thank you. And I want to call on our Vice President, Pauline Greenleaf. Pauline's going to talk about 2024, at least as she saw it as a filmmaker, and we're all going to be able to see that. Pauline, do you want to say anything before we run the movie? You'll have to unmute to do that. Do we have a glitch, Jack?
There we go. Okay, I got
Okay,
it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, John. My name is Pauline Greenlick, and I'm a member of the Battle of Homestead events community. And we had such a fantastic year in 2024. We had many, many events involving book review about labor unions. We had a wonderful program on with combining poetry and music. We also learned much about the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum and our local homestead cemetery. And in addition, we commemorated the 132nd year anniversary of the Battle of Homestead event. In addition to our events, we also had many, every Wednesday, our members and non-members congregate at the Eden Park in the Homestead waterfront. And we, chat with amongst each other, but we also have very interesting speakers. In addition to our events and our Wednesday morning gatherings, many of our members have also done many outreach activities. If you're interested in joining us either on Wednesdays or at our events, we would like to invite you to our website and our Facebook page, and also add your email to our e-blast, and you'll learn all about it and be able to participate and enjoy being with us. If you're interested in our 2025 programs and have any interesting ideas or ideas about a proposal for an event, please contact us through the Battle of Homestead email, and you could fill out a proposal form, and we welcome all kinds of ideas for our 2025 year. I'm not going to proceed any further because you will be able to see a film which really tells in detail all of the wonderful things we had done. So Jack, if you would like to take over.
Last week I love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning.
We meet today in freedom's cause and raise our voices high. We'll join our hands in union strong to battle or to die. Hold the fort, for we are coming. Union workers, be strong. Side by side we'll battle onward. Victory will come. Look, my comrades, see a Union banner waving high. Reinforcements
You feisty organizer, you're the voice and conscience for the underdog. Hey Rosie, sweet little rebel rouser, always ready to right every wrong that comes along. Born midway between Uniontown and Fairchance, it ain't no wonder you like to lead the dance on a journey with your siblings, looking for your roots.
Yay, Pauline. Way to go. Uh, I'd like to call on Jackie Cavalier to tell us a little bit about the work of our Archives Committee this year. Jackie?
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. Typically, as you know, in the past, last year we had a pretty extensive presentation on our recent accomplishment of the digitization project and the Pennsylvania Power Library. So, Pauline, I want to thank you for that great film, but also for highlighting some of the collections, of course, that are included in the PA Power Library. Over the past year, the Battle of Homestead Archives and Special Collections Project has seen steady progress. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of our archivist, Cassidy Knott, and assistant, Zachary Adams, we have continued to organize, preserve, and catalog significant artifacts and materials that document the history of the Battle of Homestead and the broader story of work and workers in the region. Despite our limited resources, Their commitment has been unwavering, and we owe them a debt of gratitude, Cassidy and Zach, for all of their hard work and invaluable contributions. We've accomplished the goal of digitizing materials and making them available electronically to researchers far and wide through the Pennsylvania Power Library, and the digitization process is ongoing. The archivists also planned and executed a mini exhibit of artifacts for our annual July 6th commemoration event at the Pump House. And in addition, we are considering ways to make these collections more visible to the local community, school groups, and other organizations throughout the region. However, the project is now at a critical crossroads. So I'm using this time tonight as a call to action. While we have been fortunate to receive small grants from Rivers of Steel and contributions through our GoFundMe campaign, those funds have been insufficient to support the project long term. The lack of significant funding poses a substantial challenge to our ability to continue this vital work. Without additional resources, our ability to preserve these artifacts and ensure their accessibility for future generations is at risk. In addition, without significant funding, we cannot take on additional collections, even though these collections are available to us. For safekeeping, we hold our collections at Guardian Storage because it's temperature controlled and secure. Guardian Storage serves as well as the workplace for our archivists. However, it is costly at approximately $600 per month or $7,200 per year. Preserving the material culture and artifacts related to the Battle of Homestead, the organization itself, as well as the history of work and workers, is essential now more than ever. These items are a tangible link to the history of labor and industry in the region, a history that shaped not only our local communities, but also had far-reaching impacts on the nation. This work ensures that the struggles, the triumphs, and the stories of those who came before us are not lost to time. It is a preservation of identity, a preservation of resilience, and a preservation of the legacy of workers' rights. Moving forward, it's imperative that we secure a significant grant or major financial contribution to ensure the project's survival and growth. We call upon the community, organizations, and individuals who value the preservation of our shared history to support this effort. Perhaps you know of someone who might be interested in a legacy gift or in planned giving. We would gladly reach out to them to speak to the value and significance of our archives project and ask for their help in sustaining this work. As my mother-in-law always said, it never hurts to make an ask out of yourself. Everyone associated with the archives project, the staff, committee members, and donors of these valuable artifacts, sincerely thank you all for your continued interest and dedication to the Battle of Homestead Foundation archives and special collections and our mission. It is our hope that together we can ensure that the rich history of work and workers in our region remains a source of inspiration and learning for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Our archives are our major effort to create content that will be there forever, and will also formulate materials and resources that would be part of our future Center for the History of Labor and Future of Work. So the Archives Committee has done great. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Jackie. Now I want to call on Larry McCullough, who's our operations manager and has been handling all the central messaging going out to our members, and also the record keeping for the organization, as well as doing our grant writing and follow up. So, Larry, can you talk to us with your operations report, please?
Yes, and everything Dak you just said, keep that in mind as I speak, because the archives are really a central part of what we're doing. But a few months ago, we began a partnership with the Department of Information Systems at Carnegie Mellon University. They have provided students to research and design a website for us, a website we call the Pittsburgh Labor History Trail. Now, this is the network of labor-related historical markers that are all across Allegheny County. You've probably seen many of them through your travels. And many of them were printed in the book Labor History Sites in the Pittsburgh Region by Charles McCollister and Howard Scott. Now, this book was published in 2016 by the Battle of Homestead Foundation and the Allegheny Labor Council. Our goal, basically, is to create a website and a smartphone app for Pittsburgh Labor History Trail that will bring visitors and residents to 62 sites, that's the ones we're starting off that are in the book, across Allegheny County. These are sites that mark Pittsburgh as a historic center for industrial productivity, technological innovation, and campaigns for social justice. Essentially, we're making a digital version of the book content that you can access and then create your own self-guided tours arranged by geographic sections, content themes, and each one would have details on nearby cultural sites, transportation access, so visitors can customize a site itinerary to suit your own schedule and interest. We're anticipating that to be ready by early summer. And our other ongoing project is, as Jackie and John have mentioned, raising funds to build the Center for the History and Future of Work. And that's a project that probably is more urgent than ever. Definitely the centerpiece of that is our archives project. A few months ago, we began our capital campaign, and so far we have brought in funds from several modest startup grants and by generous donations from many of you as individuals who are right on this call. We have started an official fundraising committee for the center, and each of you here tonight can be on that committee. You don't have to be nominated or elected. We are going to need your ideas and input. We're gathering names of potential donors that we can approach, donors that might have the same passion we have for labor history. We're going to ask if they'd like to support the center and the archives and make it the kind of educational experience that we all envision. These would be donors, again, who have a true interest and passion in labor history, and people who really, in many cases, are still making that history each and every day. If you'd like to be on a center fundraising committee, send an email to us at the foundation. That's bhfprograms@gmail.com. We'll start a conversation. Or just if you manage to get to one of our Wednesday breakfasts or just zoom into the breakfast, just, let us know in the chat or, shake our hands and say, hello, I'd like to be on that fundraising committee for the Center and Archives. You can see what we've already come up with as far as a basic brochure and overview on the website, and you can always learn more there. Someone once said that the purpose of living history is to reach beyond the page and into the mind and heart and connect us all on a more intimate level with the people who came before us. This is a living history that the Battle of Homestead Foundation will offer through the archives, through the Center, History of Future Work, and the Pittsburgh Labor History Trail. History that will connect and inspire us all and everyone who believes in America that is just and equitable and worth working for. So thanks for helping us do that.
Thank you, Larry. And I just want to say we have material about the center. It says raise funds, raise pride. The Center for the History and Future of Work, Battle of Homestead Foundation. That's useful material that you can use in your discussions about that. And Larry, thank you very much for helping us develop a plan and for working double time at less than public service wages
Sure.
to work for the foundation. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
I want to call now on Rosemary Trump, our treasurer, and to give us a brief financial report for the year. And we'll be looking at, I believe, some of the auditor's report for us. Correct, Rosemary?
Right. You're absolutely right, John. Thank you very much. And first, I want to thank all of our members who are on this Zoom meeting, as well as those who may not be, that were able to contribute both by renewing your membership. It's a new year, 2025. If you have not yet re-signed up your annual membership fee of $30, $20, whatever it is that you're able to commit to the organization, I would appreciate it. And then there were those individual donations that that exceeded the membership fee and or came in individually, and we certainly appreciate that. And in fact, I'm so proud that we were able to raise nearly $15,000 through these your individual memberships as well as donations. And in addition to that, we were able to have approximately $10,000 provided through our grant applications that Larry and others have assisted in applying for. And so that made a total income for the 2024 year available to the Battle of Homestead of $26,983.82. In terms of expenses, our expenses did exceed our revenues. However, unfortunately, we do have reserve funds and different accounts that we were able to draw from. And our expenses added up to $57,000 and $586.95. So in terms of what is available to us in 2025, we still have approximately $54,000 available to us as of December 31st. And based on those accounts, we basically have in our general funds $6,820.26. In our labor education fund that was donated through the legacy funding of a fellow member, Weisberg, $20,286.01 in that account, and in the account provided through the Bill Campbell Fund for our grant and operational funding of $26,019.05. So that leaves a balance as of December 31st, as I said earlier, of $53,182.53. The board and officers will be meeting in the next couple of weeks to review all this information, assess our annual report, as well as to plan for 2025. And as Jackie and John and Larry indicated, making adjustments where necessary. The good news, we do have additional grant funds applications out there with Rivers of Steel, with other funders, and we're hopeful, keeping our fingers crossed, that there will be good news in 2025. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. And members, let me call your attention to the chat. Our friend and member and longtime member, Jerry Fitzgibbon, has put a notation here that gives the link to the story that Michael Lewis wrote about our member Christopher Mark. I highly recommend that you read that, go to that site, read that story. Once you start, you won't be able to put it down. It's fascinating. And I think it's a wonderful story and a wonderful example of why we do what we do. And again, I thank Michael so much for being part of this, and thank you for coming on board. Board members, we are going to have a board meeting, and so check your email over the next week or so. We'll try to schedule a board meeting to get going on this plan. Those of you that have not been to the Wednesday morning breakfast group, I know it's hard to get up and come and be there by 8:30 or so, but know that you can participate by coming in on the Zoom that opens up at 9 o'clock. Right now we have anywhere from, I would say, 7 to 15 people that want to come and Zoom and talk and you've seen some pictures of what the breakfast is like in our film. And what this is a time where we can talk informally, but we do have a session where we share concerns that people have. We talk one at a time, and we have discussions of all the issues that we're facing organizationally and that our area faces, the local economy, we talk about the level and the news on the labor front, and we try to keep in touch with those that are getting together and organizing labor. And Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania has been a hotbed of union organizing, as you know, the last 3 years. And my rough guess is something in the neighborhood of 50,000 new workers have joined unions in our county. Many of them in non-traditional union settings, such as museums and libraries and academic college and all other staff unions, as well as the ongoing campaigns in the Starbucks franchising and the other non-traditional kind of union organizing. So we'd like to keep in touch, and we'd like to be supportive to groups that are doing that as well. And for those of you that came tonight, and I hope you don't resent being muted during the talk. It's how we have to sort of conduct these larger meetings. However, if you come to a program that we have at the Pump House or come to breakfast, you are not muted, and everyone can give their opinion if they wish to do so, and share their opinions with others, share the ideas. So thank you very much for coming tonight. I'd appreciate your feedback very much from the meeting, and I hope that you're excited about this year, even though we have huge tasks ahead of us, given the political situation. I hope you're excited about the possibility of building our community of resilience and pushing forward the notion that we can be a country with liberty and equality for all. So thank you very much. We will hopefully see you sometime, and let us know what you think. And I'm so proud of Chris. I want to thank him again, and Mary as well, Chris's wife, who runs a wonderful nonprofit called Reading Ready in Homestead. Thank you very much, and see you soon. And let's remember to keep solidarity forever in mind. Thank you very much.